This PPT explores the realm of the Rodra. Before going to the poem analysis, we can see the short introduction about the poet. Ralph Waldo Emerson is a well-known essayist, poet, philosopher, and one of the most important transcendentalists. He has written many poems and essays. Among them are Nature and Self-Reliance. The poem The Rodra is written in 1834, which talks about the beauty of common flora. It explores the relationship between humanity and nature. The Rodra reflects Emerson's preference for nature. Next, we are going to see the composition and structure of the poem. The Rodra is a short poem of 18 lines, slightly a longer version of sonnet, combining octaves, quatrains, and heroic couplets. The poem is clearly divided in half. The first 8 lines present the situation and implies the question in the subtitle, while the following lines present an answer. This poem contains the rhyme scheme of AABB, CDCD, EEFF, GHGH. The Rodra was included in Emerson's 1847 poem collections. Let us see the analysis of the poem, The Rodra. The poem lines are: In May, when sea winds perched our solitudes, I found the fresh Rodra in the woods, spreading its leafless blooms in a damp nook to please the desert and the sluggish brook. The poem explains. We are going to see the analysis of the first 4 lines of the poem. The speaker begins by noting the season and the general weather. It is the month of May when flowers are just beginning to bloom. An offshore breeze has inspired the poet to take a walk. He then describes coming upon the Rodra and its immediate surroundings, which seem to indicate that the plant is alone in an otherwise none too thrilling spot. It is a damp nook or corner. The brook is not babbling happily, but sluggishly. It says that the brook is it was flowing too slowly, like the sluggish. He even uses the word desert, which seems oddly misplaced for this part of the world, especially given the description of the nook. However, the spring in the New England comes notoriously late, following several months of very muddy conditions. So perhaps it is the desert of mud with no other blooms in sight that Emerson is referring to. As line 3, it reveals that the Rodra is a shrub that blooms before its leaves appear, meaning that the petals stand out in stark relief. The next 4 lines is: The purple petals fallen in the pool made the black water with their beauty gay. Here might the red bird come, his plumes to cool, and count the flower that cheapens his array. Here what Emerson he wants to convey in this poem. While begin with the analysis of these 4 lines, the poem it has the alliteration, the word peace in line 5. Emerson uses the most musical line in the poem to describe the flower itself. Notice, though, that the petals have fallen into a pool of black water, which might mean that it is really more of a stagnant puddle, an image that is consistent with the sluggish brook of line 4. Perhaps the speaker was particularly struck by the purple blooms because they were in such an otherwise unattractive water, just as the water brought a special beauty to the otherwise simple petals. Here Emerson continues to add colors as the red bird joins the purple petals and black water. The bird's plumes will be outdone, says the speaker, by the flower's color. He also uses the word coat, which hints at the fertility of spring. The next lines are: Rodra, if the sages ask thee why this charm is wasted on the earth and sky, tell them, dear, that if eyes were made for seeing, then beauty is its own excuse for being. At the beginning of the second half of the poem, the speaker exclaims the name of the flower, Rodra. His words are now being directed to the floor with no other intended listener. He speaks to the floor and tells it that if there is ever a time sages or people who profoundly wise ask it why there is so much beauty in the earth and sky, then it should reply with a simple answer. As the second half of the poem starts, the speaker shifts and addresses the floor rather than the companion, whose question inspired the poem. He even uses an exclamation point to add a celebratory verb to the line. The rest of his couplet and the two lines that follow have an implication of Emerson's impatience with those who would elevate man above nature. Readers might even hear a certain sarcasm for the so called sages who fail to appreciate the floor's charm or beauty, as well as the majesty of the earth and the sky. The use of the affectionate term dear personalizes the floor even more. The speaker also cleverly plays off those who would ask and have asked, what is the purpose of this flower? By pointedly remarking that the purpose of one's eyes is to appreciate beauty for its own sake without asking the flower to justify its existence. The speaker is imbuing the flowers with a simple but meaningful power. They have one reason to live, to give beauty to the world, and they do it very well. Now, the last four lines of the poem is why thou weren't there, O rival of the rose? I never thought to ask, I never knew, but in my simple ignorance suppose the self same power that brought me there brought you. Here, the poet, in the final set of lines,